In college football, it is never too early to look ahead to next season. So here are 10 teams that I already love in 2025. These 10 teams won't necessarily be in the order of how good I think they'll be. This isn't a ranking 1 through 10, but it's sort of how confident I am in them being able to deliver what I think they're capable of delivering above expectations. So we'll start at number 10 with East Carolina. East Carolina is a team that in 2024 was bringing back Mike Houston to be their head coach after a really disappointing, ugly year. This was supposed to be a bounce back year, but it was a tough start. They started 3-4 on the season, couldn't buy a win, and then all of a sudden they fire Mike Houston, they hire Blake Harrell to be their interim head coach, and they go on a tear. They go 8-5 with a bowl win over NC State. It was a really strong finish to the season, and so then NC State follows suit of what some other teams have been doing recently. Look at Boise State with Spencer Danielson, and they promote Harrell to the full-time head coach, which I love that, especially having seen how that worked out for Boise State this season. When you have a guy that has already gone on campus and proven he can win and has won over the locker room, you're going to have a lot of success if you put him as the permanent head coach. They have a young, skilled core, and I love the fact that Kateen Hauser is coming back as quarterback for East Carolina, I should say. And so I just really love the Pirates next season. And I think in an American conference where the contenders are sort of rotating each year, this could be the surprising team of next season for the AAC. Coming in at number 9, we have Houston. The Houston Cougars are a team that this last season looked really, really bad at the start of the season. I mean, they were pretty lifeless, but then suddenly, late in the season, they rip off 3 late conference wins. Now, doesn't mean that last year's team or this year's team was very good per se, but they really did show them some of the flashes of great coaching that we know Willie Fritz is capable of. And we also know he's capable of a quick turnaround. I mean, he won 2 games at Tulane and then won an American Conference title later. So the flashes they showed despite the circumstances, which was a just disastrous dumpster fire of a circumstance thanks to Dana Holgerson. You can ask West Virginia about that as well. It was really impressive, and I really like the fact that Willie Fritz is there as a proven guy. Right now, they're 16th in net portal ranking. That factors in the guys that they've lost and the guys they brought in, so really good, including a guy like Connor Wegman at quarterback and having a signal caller, huge for a team like Houston. They also poached Slade Nagel, the tight ends coach from LSU, and Austin Armstrong, the defensive coordinator at Florida. So going and getting some SEC guys to come be their new coordinators. I love the staff he's built, and I really think Houston is primed for a potential breakout season in the Big 12, where we've seen that is very possible. At number 8, we've got the Washington Huskies. Washington coming off of a season where Jedd Fisch takes over late in the offseason. It was the Nick Saban thing where we waited until after the semifinals, and then Nick Saban says, yeah, I'm going to retire. It creates the domino effect that results in Jedd Fisch ending up in Seattle. So he had way less time to build this team and build this roster, and as a result, they go 6-7. They have a mediocre season, and now what I love about 2025 is Jedd Fisch getting a full offseason and a full bowl season to actually be getting this stuff together. Making the bowl game is a huge factor here too, bolstering that depth, and it's just year 2 Jedd Fisch. I mean, if you saw what he did at University of Arizona, it was pretty impressive in a short amount of time, and now he's getting more of those Arizona transfers that are realizing that Brent Brennan's not a fantastic head coach, and Arizona really struggled this last season. So they've had an influx of those guys. They're going to have more influxes of talent, and I just really love what the Washington Huskies are building right now. I think Jedd Fisch can easily get this team back into contention in the Big Ten this next season. Coming in at number 7, we have Georgia Tech. I know there's a lot of people that are high on this team. They're pretty trendy since everybody was able to watch what they did against Georgia late in the season. But I thought this was the best 7-win team in the country. They had a really tough strength of schedule. I mean, you just look at the teams they had to play throughout the season. It was wall-to-wall difficult in the ACC. And first-year defensive coordinator Tyler Stantucci was there, and he did a lot of great things. And you bring up the fact that it's his first year, because I think he can do even better things in his second year. And in 2025, they have the same staff. If Stantucci's name sounds familiar, he was the same guy that made the defensive turnaround at Duke we saw under Mike Elko. Haynes King is back at quarterback for Georgia Tech, and this season, I'd say their schedule is marginally easier for what it's worth, and I think they could improve upon what's been really 2 solid seasons in a row under Brent Key. They're really laying a solid foundation. Key, another example of a guy that was initially hired as an interim head coach a couple of seasons ago now, and then eventually they make the permanent guy because he really showed something extra that he brought to the locker room and brought to this team. Coming in at number 6, we have the Michigan Wolverines, another really trendy, hot topic team right now. But is it all fluff? Is it actually true? In 2024, they had a disappointing first few months of the season. They appeared to be destined to go 6-5, but then they just get the 2 insane late wins in the season. They beat Ohio State, and then they beat Alabama in a bowl game, in a game where Alabama starters were playing and invested. So there were some flashes of really great coaching down the stretch there. And yeah, they just didn't have a quarterback throughout the whole year. Guess what? In 2025, Bryce Underwood is coming to town. He's the big, hot name quarterback. He's probably going to start as a true freshman with how much they've invested in that guy. And they have a new offensive coordinator in Chip Lindsey, a guy that is going to be able to probably do well with Bryce Underwood. He was able to coach for Drake May for a season there. I'm a little skeptical overall about Lindsey, but I do think if given the right talent, he can be productive and get this offense back to a net positive, which you couldn't say they were a net positive this last season. And they also have lost a lot less production than they did last season, where their national title team graduated a ton of seniors and guys that left. They have a lot up back from this last team and this last season, and I really think that if given another year and if they can flex their coaching muscles like they were able to do late in the season, the Michigan Wolverines can very quickly get back on the map as a contender in college football. Coming in at number 5, we have South Carolina. The Gamecocks in 2024 were a tad bit inconsistent at the start of the season, but once they hit their stride and once Lenora Sellers started to unlock this offense under Dowell Logains, they really turned it on. And the thing that really helped them was they had a generational, and I'm not stuttering when I say that, a generational pass rush. They were just killing guys on that side of the football. They were elite at one thing and solid at a bunch of other things, and it turned into a great finish to the season. Not many people wanted to play South Carolina because they were just killing it late in the year. Obviously, they end up losing that bowl game to Illinois. They were a little shorthanded in that game, but in 2025, Lenora Sellers is back. I think his development will continue. Even though Dowell Logains isn't there anymore, he gets poached to be the head coach at App State. I still think they built a lot of things. In another year of maturity, it'll be a very similar system. Will still be really good. That elite pass rush is back. That generational pass rush, I should say. They got the key guys back to continue to bolster that. They're top 20 in both the recruiting class and their portal classes. That's net portal classes factoring in their gains and losses, and so they're fully prepared to run it back this next season and continue to ascend. This feels like the most serious a Shane Beamer team has been headed into next season. We've had a couple of teams that have been fun, have felt like they can compete and they can be in some of these games. I really feel like in 2025 it's going to be the most serious South Carolina team we have seen under Shane Beamer. Coming in at number 4, they are sleeping giants no more, the Arizona State Sun Devils. They have been on fire this offseason. They even had a couple of days ago, where they landed 3 of the biggest names remaining in the portal all at once, seemingly as a statement. It was pretty cool. They were the surprise team of this season in 2024. They win the Big 12 championship. They won pretty much every big game and came up just short against the Texas Longhorns. Some people saying that they should have won and there should have been a targeting call here or there. I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm saying they were pretty dang close to getting to the national semifinals, which would have been really insane. And in 2025, they're returning virtually their entire offense, which includes the key playmakers like Sam Levitt, Jordan Tyson, and their offensive line, except for Cam Scadaboo. He's headed to the NFL draft, but they land Kanye Udo from Army, the running back transfer, and they already had a really deep running back room that's going to get a bunch of guys back that didn't have a chance to shine because Scadaboo was so consistent throughout the season and their guys. So I think there's a lot of key depth at the running back position that is going to help them. They have a huge portal haul that I referenced earlier. It was very impressive to see, really bolstering them in a lot of places. They were a little short-handed this last season, like in the secondary, and they have the complete same staff. They kept things together so well. It's such a deep, underrated staff. You've got Kenny Dillingham, you've got Brian Ward at defensive coordinator, you've got offensive coordinator Marcus Arroyo, who I think is one of the most underrated names in the game, and then Sean Aguano, a running backs coach, also an elite running backs coach, I should say, because he has done some phenomenal work there for Arizona State. The Sun Devils are building in the exact right direction. I think they could end up being the favorites to win the Big 12 next season, which is pretty unfathomable if you said that even just a couple of months ago. At number 3, we have the Clemson Tigers. In 2024, they sort of folded versus the top-tier competition. When they played Georgia, they folded in that game. When they played at the end of the season against South Carolina, they folded in that game. When they played in the playoffs, they couldn't get it done. So their top-tier competition kind of ragdolled them, which isn't necessarily the Clemson standard, and it's not been the level they've been at for a little bit. ACC champs still, despite that, shows you how much potential this team has and how quickly they can get things figured out. And they had more offensive consistency this season as Garrett Riley sort of sunk his teeth into this system and this offense with these players. And I think that in 2025, with the return of some key playmakers, that's going to be a huge factor. But the other stuff is hiring Tom Allen, a defensive coordinator, which I think is huge because their defensive coaching has been lackluster for the last couple of seasons, been a big reason of their regression, just kind of ever since Brent Venables left, really, the hiring of in-house coordinators to try and just shore up the defensive side of the football. And now Clemson's using the transfer portal, and they're landing top-tier guys. I mean, they are an apex predator in the transfer portal, and they just hadn't been using it. Now that they're in there and they're actually landing important names, my goodness, I think Clemson has high upside with this coaching staff and with this new coordinator in Tom Allen. I am very excited to see what Clemson football can do in 2025. Coming in at number 2, we have Tulane. The Green Wave are a team that was in year 1 under John Summerall this past season, and yet they still made the American Conference title game. Yes, the elephant in the room is going to be that they did fade late in the year, but I really think them fading late in the season sort of disguised what was otherwise unrecognized as a fantastic season. Like, Summerall instantly made this team a contender, and I know they already were contenders under Willie Fritz, but it was not the same team that Willie Fritz had. There was a completely new roster, essentially, that had to churn in there, and now John Summerall's track record in his 2 seasons at Troy as the head coach, he won a Sun Belt title, won at least 11 games in each of those 2 seasons. In his first season at Tulane, guess what? He gets them to the American Conference title, which is an arguably tougher conference to make the title game in. So in 2025, I have John Summerall listed twice because I look at his track record and he is very similar to Kurt Cignetti. Google him. He wins everywhere he goes, and I think that's going to continue to happen. And the power of Tulane, I think he can unlock it. I think they have some of the best resources and best access in the group of 5, and they're going to continue to use that. And I really think Tulane is going to continue some upward ascension despite some of these portal losses they're having to endure. I think Summerall is going to rebuild a contender and win the American Conference next season, and I am fairly confident about that. Coming in at number 1, we have the Ole Miss Rebels. Now, Ole Miss at their peak this last season was one of the best teams in the country. You simply cannot deny it. With what they were doing at their peak efficiency, they were manhandling some elite opponents. I look at that Georgia victory as sort of their big statement win. The issue was a little bit of inconsistency and some very derailing losses to Kentucky and to Florida in the season. That can't happen if you want to be a top-tier contender. Ole Miss misses the playoffs. As a result of that, doesn't even have a chance to go prove they have a chance to win the national title or prove they deserved it. So that was what held them back this season. But in 2025, I think the people were holding back on Ole Miss because they were thinking, well, the same level of investment in NIL and the portal won't be there again in 2025. They sort of circled last year and were all in. It's not going to happen again. Well, it's there again. They have the 3rd-ranked portal class in net ranking right now. They have a top 10 talent roster as a result. They are stacking talent, and they are stacking elite talent. And yes, the portal can lend itself to more volatility. Sure, you could blame that on those derailing losses this last season. But if you're stacking multiple elite portal classes, it almost sort of cancels out that volatility that can come because you're finding more of those players that actually fit your system and scheme that are going to become anchors for your team the next season. So I think Ole Miss is in a position where they could be just as good at their peak again, and if they start to figure out a little bit more consistency, avoid those dumb losses, I mean, watch out. Ole Miss football is coming in 2025. So those are the 10 teams I love in 2025. I'm super high on them. Let me know down in the comments, which of these teams are you high on? Maybe are you lower on some of these teams than I am? And if there's other teams I didn't list that you think are going to be really good in 2025, let me know down in the comments. It's going to be a long off season, so if you've got some ideas, some things you want me to cover, some potential content that you think would be really cool to cover on this account, let me know down in the comments. And as usual, make sure you're subscribed if you're not subscribed, and some of you might think you are, but you're probably not. So just go ahead and check that, and I will greatly appreciate it. So that's all I got for you guys today, and I will see you later this week.